Welcome once again to Making Your Marriage Great. In this session, I want us to talk about in-law relationships. The passage which we'll start with is Deuteronomy chapter 5 and verse 16. And that passage says, "Honor your father and mother as the Lord your God has commanded you, that your days may be long and that you may be well in the land which the Lord your God has given you." There's a whole bunch of mother-in-law jokes which are out there, and a lot of them are pretty funny. And some of them, they kind of cut a little close, so maybe they're not as funny. But how should a husband and a wife deal with their parents' ideas and suggestions and needs? Well, the answer in word is balance. The first principle, two principles I want us to look at. The first principle is this: if you cleave, you leave. Of course, that comes back to Genesis 2 and 24. Moses writes here by the inspiration of the Spirit, "For this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." Of course, that's repeated in the New Testament in Ephesians chapter 5. It's about cutting the apron strings. It's about being one person with your spouse. Your relationship with your spouse has to be more important and has to take priority over the relationship you have with your parents. So what does that mean? Well, let's look at some instances. First thing that means is, if it's possible, when you get married, have separate living arrangements from your parents. It's important, especially in the first years of your marriage, that you focus on your spouse, that you learn with your spouse what your marriage is going to look like, that is the closest person, the most important person in your life. It's important to create an atmosphere where you are truly husband and wife. Second thing which goes with that, the idea of leaving and cleaving, is this: decisions. Now, parents oftentimes know best. They've been there. They have experienced all these things already, and sometimes their suggestions, there's a lot of wisdom which is there. In Deuteronomy 18, we see where Jethro talks to Moses about how Moses is overwhelming himself with his responsibilities. Jethro says, you need to get people to help you so you don't burn out. Well, those ideas and suggestions are good. But when a marriage begins, it's important that a husband and wife have the opportunity to make their own decisions. Those decisions need to be made by you. It's okay to have input, but they need to be made by you. It is your marriage. It is your life. Thirdly, as we talk about that idea of leaving and cleaving, when you fight, be careful how much you share of that fight with your parents. Say a wife gets upset at her husband, and they have a pretty difficult situation, pretty hard argument. The wife goes to her mother's house and she tells her mother all the things that are wrong with her husband and all the reasons why her husband is wrong. And she is very emotional, very upset. Well, the mother hears these things and she's upset as well. Now the wife comes back and meets her husband. The husband asks for forgiveness. There's forgiveness which is there. There's reconciliation. And now the husband and wife are in good terms. But the mother-in-law is still going to be pretty upset, because sometimes it's more difficult to have the mother-in-law placated than it is the wife. Be very careful what you share as far as intimate details, as far as disputes, as far as financial matters, and things such as that. The husband and wife need to be an independent unit. Now, the second principle we're going to look at is this: honor your father and your mother. Once again, this comes from Ephesians 6, 1 through 3. Now, we're told that children should obey their parents. And of course, when you're a toddler, even when you're a teenager, there needs to be that obedience. But as you grow into adulthood, that turns more into honor. What honor means is to show respect, to show kindness, and to show dignity. It's important to show these things to your parents and also to your spouse's parents. So, how do you do that? You show honor by visiting. You show honor by loving. You show honor by sharing your life with your parents and also with your spouse's parents as well. Let's look at some suggestions in talking about honor. First and foremost, don't show favoritism of one set of parents over the other. Be careful when you share information with the wife's parents that you also can share this information with the husband's parents as well. Both of them need to have honor, and be careful about showing favoritism one over the other. Secondly is this: speak kindly of your parents. Don't badmouth them. Don't talk about all the things that they always do wrong. Don't share all your frustrations. Remember, these parents wiped your bottom when you were growing up. These parents paid for your Barbie dolls and your G.I. Joes when you were growing up. These parents raised you. Return that favor by showing honor and showing appreciation for who they are. But when you talk about this idea, be very careful with how you talk about your in-laws. Somebody can talk about their parents, and that may be good, may be bad, but boy, you get in big trouble when you start running down someone else's parents. Be very careful how you treat the in-laws. Show great respect to them. In-law relationships don't have to be negative. We read in the Bible many in-law relationships, and usually they're looked at in a positive way. We already talked about Moses and Jethro, and how Jethro helped Moses through his work because of his experience. Ruth and Naomi. Ruth saved Naomi and brought her back to her homeland and brought her back honor because of the commitment and love which was there. Peter had his mother-in-law healed, and we see a good relationship between Peter and his mother-in-law in the New Testament. But wait a second, what if you are the in-law? What if you have children who have married and now you're an in-law? What are some things you need to do if you're the in-law? First and foremost, remember your goal has always been independence. I'll never forget when my children finally were potty trained, when they finally were off formula, I was so happy. I thought I was going to be rich. Didn't have to buy diapers, didn't have to buy formula anymore. My goal was a measure of independence. I remember I was happy when my kids were able to go to school, when my kids were able to drive. My goal has always been promoting independence in my children. That needs to be the case as well when my children get married. We always need to look to make sure that we can, in our influence, that we work on trying to create a sense of independence in our children. Secondly, you still help. And you can still give money, you can still give advice, but always be fostering that idea of independence which is there. Also, when you talk about giving money, be very careful that you don't do financial coercion. In other words, I only give you money if you do what I want. Don't be a controlling in-law. Don't be a controlling parent. Allow that husband and wife to create their own family. Allow that husband and wife to make their own decisions. And in every case, love your kids. Show emotional support. Show warmth. Be there for them in every situation that you can. In-laws many times receive a bad rap. And oftentimes, as we talk about marriage and you do marriage counseling, you hear a lot of negative things about what a spouse's parents have done or what a person's parents have done. But let's always work to try to create a relationship here that is positive and that is good at every instance.